Hello, I'm Dr. Sam Hancock of the Emerald Planet and Emerald Planet TV. We come to you on a week-to-week basis from Washington, D.C. in the United States as we look around the globe in 144 different nations, looking for those 1,000 best practices, the technology, services, and products that are making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And as we have a planet of 9 billion people by 2038 and possibly 12 to 13 billion by the end of this century, how are we going to be able to take care of all these people on planet Earth? And that's what Emerald Planet's all about. We come to you looking at the solutions, the best practices from around the globe as we create the Emerald Planet. Hello, welcome to the Emerald Planet. We're making a difference as we move through the 21st century. And seeing the long-term impacts of climate change. We're glad to have you. Thank you for being with us. Looking at the issue of water and natural zones within urban areas, we're having more and more discussions and more design projects. At the same time, we're trying to figure out what should be this actual balance between nature, urban settings, and the humans, and actually animals and plants that have to live in these very restricted, constricted areas. And I have a gentleman sitting right beside me that's doing a lot of this work. This is Kurt Moser. He's an ecologist and director for 4 Mile Run Foundation. And Kurt, welcome back to the Emerald Planet.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the mission and vision of 4 Mile Run Foundation.
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit organization, all volunteers, and we do a lot of restoration work, a little bit of advocacy work for better park amenities and better policies around natural lands. We do some recreation. We get people outside and try to introduce them to nature in our
We're
urban
going to
setting.
see some of that too.
And education, working with kids and trying to get stewardship in early in people's lives.
I'm going to put this up. Now this is really a juxtaposition where you have this very urban area and natural forest all together. So tell us why this is becoming the norm as far as reforestation and possibly 80% of America, because about 80% of the Americans live in urban areas now.
Well, that's just it. That's where we live, and that's one of the reasons why restoration here is important. It's because that's where people see it, that's where people feel it, and that's where people most easily can get the benefit of it.
Mm-hmm. Now, when they see this, I'm going to leave this up because you got all this going on in the sky, and this is a beautiful photograph. But how are we sensitizing people that yeah, you're living in an urban area, but we have to have this nature along with us, really to make us almost human beings? How do we do that?
Well, I think part of it is actually getting them to realize it's there. For a long time, I think lower 4 Mile Run in particular was felt to be more of a drainage ditch for the city and kind of treated that way. And the more people see it that way, the less they see it as a place that's natural or a place that's interesting or a place that engages their minds or their bodies in active recreation.
But we're looking at this photograph here. Now, we've only just, kind of almost gone around the bend, if we can use that metaphor. But we look like we're just out in the middle of the wilderness somewhere, but we're still in the same urban area that we just saw.
That's one of the remarkable things about 4 Mile Run, is that it really is a very natural space that's right tucked in the middle of the city. And that people are starting to realize that, and that the trail is improving to the extent that people can actually access those areas and enjoy them more, and be involved in making sure that restoration proceeds and progresses.
Now, looking at this scene right here, what is this helping as far as the nature is concerned, but also as human beings, as they're again in these very intense urban areas, as becoming more and more concrete, steel, brick, and yet you're trying to introduce more and more what we're seeing right here is these very placid waterways, much greenery surrounding the whole area, and again using this whole thing about water and plants as a carbon sump to help to clean the environment itself.
Yeah, so they do have an important ecological function in terms of things like carbon storage or pollutant removal, but they also serve as an area of natural beauty, a place where people can relax, place where people can get away from the city, even though they're still right in the middle of the city. I can tell you that going into the little tributaries off of 4 Mile Run and going into some of the natural areas that are back in the streams there, other than hearing the ambient noise coming from the city, you would not know that you were in the city. And it's because we do have a decent acreage of natural lands, or lands that are being managed as natural lands.
And we're seeing that right here. You know, we have, you know, this power line in the back, but yet you got someone out there paddling, you know, very, you know, contently, you know, on the water, surrounded by green. So how are people adapting to this, knowing, you know, mentally and psychologically they're really in the city, but yet they can go out and just totally relax and enjoy nature as it should be enjoyed?
Well, part of it, I think, is realizing what the city should be. The city should be a place that has nature. The city should be a place where you can see a belted kingfisher diving down and taking a fish out of the water. It should be a place where when we walk around, we see interesting birds or butterflies or plants, flowers. And I think that that's maybe runs contrary to the way we sort of stereotype the idea of a city, but I think it is absolutely a better way of living in a city.
Now, looking at this really goes back to just what we were talking there a little earlier on, as far as, you know, we have the again, this built environment, and now we're turning it into a nature space. So looking at the taxpayers, the ones that are actually paying for all this, and what's the feedback you're getting now that you're turning more and more of this built environment into more, in a sense, a natural preserve, and they're feeling, you know, this maybe is a little balance for everyone, or, you know, let's go back to concrete. I mean, how do people really feel about this, and what's the feedback you're getting?
Well, I think it's obviously people find it very important that 4 Mile Run not flood again. And so there are limitations on how natural a space it can be, because it is within a flood control channel. And it's got protective levees to keep the neighborhoods from flooding. And ever since that's been built, it has never flooded, the lower part. And at the same time, today, people go running there and cycling there. They go birding there. You know, it's something where people are starting to realize there's a lot of recreational opportunity there. We do kayak cleanups at 4 Mile Run Park. It's really fun to be out in a kayak, even if what you're doing is picking up trash. It's just a blast to be outside.
And the thing about this is you have a sense of community, because people are out there, and there's, you know, numerous kayaks and canoes out there, and it really is a community. They're sharing coffee and pastries, and I mean, it's almost like a party on water, and yet they're doing something very meaningful. In other words, cleaning up the tributary itself.
Yes. We actually just recently had a happy hour event, and had a whole bunch of people came and just wanted to talk about what they were seeing at 4 Mile Run. Trade stories of spotting a beaver swimming up and down 4 Mile Run, as a number of people have seen in the last couple of weeks. And it's really, it is building community, and that's, for us, we sort of think of our charge as nature, culture, community. We want to get people to understand some of the local history and some of the reason behind why 4 Mile Run is the way it is today, and why that flood control channel exists, and why it's important, and what it was like before it, because it really is fascinating. You showed a picture earlier that showed the flooding in Arlandria, which was terrible in the 60s and 70s.
Right, yeah. And hopefully we're beyond that, but now the intensity of these storms, we may have to rethink, you know, how we actually manage that, particularly in a very natural way. That's correct.
The July storm we had last year, the one that dropped 3 inches of rain in a pretty short amount of time, the water was very, very high, very, very fast, and it did not overtop the levee, but it definitely showed that a lot of water can come through there in a heavy storm, and given that we do expect to see more of these heavier storms, you know, it opens up the possibility of flooding.
Now, looking at this design work that we have here, you know, the picture of pictures, what are we seeing here, and how do you, as, you know, the director and ecologist, try to balance all of this and to share this information with the public about, you know, here's where we are, here's where we want to go, and these are the benefits from that?
Yeah, well, the picture is one of the signs from the Arlington County side of the run, and the county worked with a photographer. In fact, I think most of those are photographs by a 4 Mile Run volunteer, David Howell, who took a lot of the pictures that I have of wildlife.
Right.
And we share a lot of those on our website. Having the interpretive features so people can see and know what they're looking at, and know that it's know the difference, that you know, if they're seeing a native plant or if they're seeing something that's an invasive plant that also flowers, getting people to sort of recognize the nature that's around them. You know, I think that having signs in the park, and we helped develop some of the signage on the Alexandria side. Having the signage in the park where people can understand what they're looking at, and maybe stoke their curiosity a little bit, it's really important.
So you think this really is a way that you're really engaging and reaching to the people and having them then start providing feedback, you know, to what you're doing and how you're doing it, but also it gives them a bridge of understanding that if you didn't have the signage out there and the discussion about what they're seeing, they just would, it's a beautiful sight, but they really wouldn't understand it or wouldn't know it.
Right. Well, and it gives them a sense of context. It gives them a sense of their relationship to the nature that we have close to us, and gives them more of an appreciation of what's around them. When you start to know the names of trees or the names of flowers or the names of animals, you start to have more of a relationship than if you just see tree, 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 tree. And that's why we like doing that. That's why we lead nature walks and introduce people to the nature.
Well, you've brought up volunteers a number of times just in this short discussion that we're having right now. We're seeing some of these. Why are these volunteers so important for 4 Mile Run Foundation and so important to the city itself?
Well, well, for two reasons. One, just in the last year, we've had more than 2,000 hours of volunteer service, and more than I think we've had about 330 volunteers spending their time helping to remove invasive plants, pick up litter around 4 Mile Run, and do other conservation work to try to make sure that it's really in the best possible shape. And I think what our goal is really to encourage that sense of stewardship. I sort of sometimes think of it as ownership, like, you know, I feel like it's our park, but it's really stewardship more than it is ownership. It's really feeling like this is a place I need to take care of. This is a place that I'm part of a community that takes care of.
We're going to go out on this photograph because we were talking about this a little bit earlier as far as the kayaks and the canoes and all that, building sense of community. How do you see what we're looking at right here expanding and growing over the next 5 or 10 or 15 years and the impact? And we got about 20 seconds to do all that.
Well, I can tell you our kayak cleanups have been pretty much oversubscribed the whole time. We had 18 of them last year, and we had, I don't remember how many volunteers, but over 100 volunteers coming out just in kayaks to pick up litter. And it's a way that they can work together, meet people, have some fun, learn a little bit, and do some good.
That's fantastic. Kirk Moser, he's ecologist, director for 4 Mile Run Foundation. And thank you for being with us as we're looking at handling stormwater, but in a way that's more natural and actually will be sustainable in the future as we create the Emerald Planet.